Hidden deep in the redwood forests of Northern California lies one of the most secretive and heavily guarded private compounds in the United States. Bohemian Grove, a 2,700-acre retreat in the small town of Monte Rio, has, for over a century, hosted the most powerful people in America, and arguably the world. The Grove is owned and operated by the Bohemian Club, an elite, all-male private club founded in San Francisco in 1872. It originally began as a collective of artists, a sanctuary for creatives. But over time, as it attracted more wealthy and influential members, things started to get more and more sinister. Today, lady and man, we are taking a deep dive into the disturbing truth behind Bohemian Grove, and even going over some leaked recordings that have recently come to light. Buckle up. Things are about to get sorta weird. I just realized you guys can see me down there. Every July, approximately 2,000 people gather in the Bohemian Grove for a 2-week encampment. While the Bohemian Club insists the retreat is nothing more than a chance to unwind, the heavy security, strict no media policy, and participation of some pretty major political and corporate leaders sort of tells a little bit of a different story. For years, Bohemian Grove had been the topic of many conspiracy theories, and it's sort of easy to see why. One of the most talked about aspects of Bohemian Grove is the so-called Cremation of Care ceremony, performed on the first night of the retreat. I actually didn't really know what to write here. The ritual is just kind of weird. That's probably the best way I can put it. It's just weird. It involves robed participants conducting a nighttime ceremony before a 40-foot tall stone owl, the Grove's central icon and its unofficial mascot. During the ceremony, they symbolically burn an effigy of dull care, and that's said to represent the burdens of responsibility and worldly stress, basically freeing themselves from consequence and concern for the duration of the retreat. Apparently, to the Bohemians, it's nothing more than a pageantry, a way to mark the transition into a period of personal freedom and reflection. But to outsiders, especially after footage of the ritual leaked in the early 2000s, it just kind of looks a little bit sinister.
You know they planned the bombing for Hiroshima and Nagasaki there?
What was that?
Never mind.
One of the most persistent ideas links the Bohemian Grove owl to Moloch, a deity mentioned in the Old Testament, associated with child sacrifice. But Moloch was always depicted as a bull, not an owl. But still, the association stuck after early critics of the Grove drew parallels between the fiery rituals of the Cremation of Care and descriptions of ancient sacrificial rites. Some have even claimed that the club refers to the owl as Moloch, but there's actually no proof of that at all. Still, in public imagination, seeing powerful men and world leaders dressed up in robes performing rituals next to a giant owl statue is definitely pretty concerning. So tensions eventually rose, and humans, like always, need to see what the fuck was going on. In 2000, radio host and conspiracy theorist Alex Jones snuck into Bohemian Grove with a camera crew. His footage of the Cremation of Care ceremony went viral. In fact, it was sort of one of the first viral conspiracy videos on the internet.
So shall we burn thee once again this night, and in the flames that eat thine effigy.
Obviously, with technology limitations in the 2000s, the video was shit. But it was just good enough to make out powerful men dressed in robes, chanting and offering a symbolic human figure to a mass idol. I've decided I'm going to start my own club. It's going to be called Mariner Grove. And to join, you need to subscribe. That was like the shittest way I've ever asked you guys to subscribe. Holy fuck. I'm getting lazy with that. The footage you're seeing now is actually legit footage from the Grove. Very weird. It is very weird. But Jones wasn't actually the only one to attempt to sneak in. Over the decades, dozens have tried. In 1980, an activist named Rick Clower posed as a worker and managed to make his way into the Grove. He published detailed accounts of the facilities, the weird decor, and the separation between elite camps and lower status camps. In 2002, a man named Richard McCaslin, later known as the Phantom Patriot, pretty sure he gave that name to himself, broke into the Grove at night armed with a rifle, a sword, a gas mask, and Molotovs. He believed, based on the theories that he'd read online, that child sacrifices and satanic rituals were being performed inside. Of course, he was caught, arrested, and sentenced to 11 years in prison. Security at the Grove is no joke. The Grove is divided into dozens of camps. They're all named different things like Owl's Nest and Hillbillies, Lost Angels, subscribe to Jaros, and these camps often reflect different spheres of influence, and each of the camps has a level of status within the hierarchy of the Grove. But what's kind of ironic is that for all the weird imagery and mystique, much of what happens inside is apparently pretty mundane. There's nothing more than lectures and drinking, and maybe a couple of campfire songs. There are apparently daily lakeside talks where powerful figures give off the record speeches about the world and stuff, but none of this has actually ever been proven. While direct leaks from Bohemian Grove are rare, a few internal documents have actually emerged over the years. Most of them are either smuggled out by employees or leaked by former members and guests. One of the earliest and most discussed examples comes from a 1989 pamphlet obtained by journalist Philip Weiss, who went undercover and attended the Grove for several days while researching an expose for Spy magazine. Weiss's reports remains one of the most legit first-hand accounts of the Grove's activities. He described an atmosphere of extreme privilege and men pissing openly against the redwood trees. Yeah, he actually wrote that. He noted how former presidents just casually wandered around drunk. It sort of sounded like all of this was just a big hangout with the boys. But what is intriguing were the contents of the Grove's annual Lakeside Talk schedule, obtained by journalists and researchers in the 1990s. These talks, while officially off the record, featured presentations from major political and economic figures on topics ranging from nuclear strategy to global resource management. While the Bohemian Club insists that these are personal views shared in a private setting, even just the presence of multiple top-level government officials discussing foreign policy might be a little bit too close to a shadow government. Wouldn't that be crazy if the government controlled things without us knowing? Hate to live in that world. In 2004, a series of internal newsletters were leaked by an anonymous Grove employee. The newsletters described upcoming guests, camp activities, and summaries of past events. One mentioned a private fireside chat involving multiple high-ranking officials from the State Department and the World Bank, which is a bit weird. That is weird, but I think the truth is the Grove is nothing more than a rich gentleman's hangout. I seriously don't think that anything weird is going on here. Just a bunch of guys way out of my tax bracket having a much more entertaining life than I am. I'm sure they do probably talk politics. That generally would happen when you have some of the most powerful men on earth in one spot, but I don't think any babies are being sacrificed. I think since the conspiracies have come out about the Grove, they've just lent into this whole like over-the-top, almost avant-garde style of sacrificial rituals and shit like that. I don't know. I could be wrong. Maybe they are sacrificing babies. Like